It's time for the Financial Crisis Talk Center with Ken Gross and David Einstandig from Thav Gross.
Credit card debt is number one. I view it as financial cancer.
40% of your gross income is going to just pay the debt service. You got no chance of getting out.
I would give up my credit score to get rid of debt.
Here's your host, Ken Gross.
Good morning. Welcome to the Financial Crisis Talk Center. It is a wonderful day. We've got a special guest today. The word of the day for this segment is future. And with us in the studio is Ryan Fishman, who's running for State Senate in the 13th District.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Ryan, welcome to the show.
Absolutely.
I should say hello to David Einstandig, my co-host, and Brian Small, co-host.
Good morning.
Host.
Always a pleasure to see you, Ken.
Absolutely a pleasure to be here.
It's always good. All right, so let's get to it because we've got a half hour for this segment. I want to learn about Ryan. Ryan, I know you're running for State Senate. 13th District is covering Berkeley, Birmingham, Bloomfield Hills, Clawson, Rochester City, Rochester Hills City, Royal Oak, and Troy. I got it all covered there?
That's everything, but not Bloomfield Township.
But
sometimes people get confused.
Yeah, it's, so what district covers Bloomfield Township?
That will be District 12. Today it's District 13. January 1, it's District 12.
That
it's
makes
amazing
it, that's clear.
You wouldn't expect anything less from Michigan politics anyway, would you? I mean, that happens even at the U.S. level, too, on the congressional districts. So you guys, so you're running for a spot that's opening up because John Papa George is term limited?
Yes.
All right, so that's so I did a little research. I see you've got on the Democratic side you've got Cindy Peltonen.
Mm-hmm.
Am I saying her name correctly?
I believe so.
Okay, so the two of you are running for the the Democratic primary.
Yes.
And then on the Republican side, I see there were a whole bunch of guys, but apparently a couple dropped off. Marty Nolenberg, who we've had on the show a while ago, actually. It was someone we were over at a different radio station, I think. Al Guy.
I've never met him. I haven't seen him at an event. I'm not sure how you say his name.
And Rocky Rezkowski, that's a name that we hear in Michigan politics. And then there was a Tom McMillan who dropped out, and apparently a Chuck Moss who dropped out as well.
Chuck is still in,
as
far as I know, yeah.
Okay. And then there's Ethan Baker as well.
Yes.
So anyway, I did, so where are you from? You're from Bloomfield, born and raised?
Bloomfield Hills, born in Detroit, grew up in Bloomfield Hills, went to Syracuse for a journalism degree, and came back to Michigan, moved to Birmingham.
Yeah, the thing that struck me the most is you're in the context of politics. I think of you as young. I think of you as young anyway compared to me.
Well, in the context of real life, I think of you as old. So what's the difference?
That's great. Joe, can you remove David from his seat and just
raise your hand if
put him
you're
with
60
Brian.
or older in this room right now? Well, you got short arms, just like going to dinner.
I can
Reaching
lie.
for your wallet.
I can lie. I've been lying. I was lying through my 50s. I'm going to lie. I'm certainly going to lie during my 60s.
At least you're consistent.
Yeah. So, but the part about, there's a tremendous amount of disillusionment, I think, among the electorate in its entirety, but particularly about the young people,
Right.
Apathy towards elections and everything else. What's inspired you to go into politics? Is really what is fascinates me.
I'll tell you briefly after.
It's certainly not the money.
No, it's not the money.
You weren't dropped as a baby or anything?
I might have been dropped a few times, or dropped or thrown, one or the other. Yesterday is probably a good day to have this point. 3 26-year-olds signed the Declaration of Independence. And I think in our country we've always had young leadership with a seat at the table because somebody has to have their eye on your word of the day, which is our future. For me, growing up here, I left like so many of my contemporaries. I don't know if your daughter moved out of state for a while or not, or her fiance, but for me, when I came back to Michigan, I found there were maybe 5, 6, 7 kids that I grew up with and were friends with, all through school that were still living here. Most were in New York, L.A., Chicago, Washington, D.C. So after I saw politics firsthand working as a Capitol reporter in New York for about 4 years, the graft, the greed, the corruption, the guys posting shirtless pictures on Craigslist, the governor sleeping with prostitutes, another one that had embezzled $70 million from a state-funded charity. In my head, I said, I could sit on the radio, and no offense to guys that do, and talk about it, or I could try to make an impact and do something about it. And the place that made the most sense to come back and do it was Michigan, where I think we are at the precipice of, two roads. One where we can tap into what we have here and drive towards economic recovery. The other is we can continue to sit back and let education slip the way of Kentucky or Arkansas or Mississippi, let our manufacturing and engineering infrastructure fall away and crumble, and watch our economy continue to collapse.
When you think of Michigan, do you think of Michigan, and are you focused on Detroit or a broader spectrum from the standpoint of the economy? I mean, like when you think of Detroit, the bankruptcy, kind of also a little bit of a rebirth going on with Dan Gilbert's contribution and kind of the community's energy in trying to revitalize Detroit. How do you view Detroit relative to the state is really what I'm coming at.
I think Detroit is the hub for economic growth, and I think there are a few. It's not to say Detroit stands alone. Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, the Troy area. There are places where there's a significant infrastructure for manufacturing, engineering, business, and I think they all play their own interesting role. But Detroit is the key. And if you really want to move Michigan forward, if you want to end the brain drain, if you want to bring young people back, the way to do it is with a vibrant city where they want to live. So, and one of the endorsements we got this week was from the Detroit Police Officers Association, who typically wouldn't weigh in a Birmingham, Bloomfield Senate race, but typically Mayor Duggan wouldn't either. But what they are saying, and I believe that they're correct, is when we can find good ways to crack the public safety problem that the city has, then you can really drive it forward. When you've got schools in the city where people can send their kids, because today you've got a stratosphere. You can be 18 or 19 or 20 and live in Detroit. You can be 60 or 70. But if you're 35 with a growing family, there aren't places to send your kids to school. So I think if we can find the ways to move Detroit out of the current crisis responsibly and managed, and I think we have that opportunity with Mike Duggan, then I think we see Detroit as an economic driver for our state.
What's your thoughts on the grand bargain?
Was it perfect? No. But no law is perfect. The Constitution wasn't perfect. That's why there's a package of amendments that went along with it. They're fixes to a less than perfect law. But we had to do something. I think, and we've seen it from the 5 Republicans who are running for this seat, that not one would have voted for the grand bargain, not one supported a piece of it.
I read that right up in, it was in the Oakland Press, and they had a little forum, a Republican forum last week. I don't know the benefit of, to me it's almost cherry picking when after the fact you go on record saying I wouldn't have supported something. I don't know the benefit of doing that from the standpoint of once it's there, why not say, well, it is what it is. But we're coming up to a break. When we come back, I want to stay on that and we'll cover more. We'll be back.
Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Thav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Thav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
Are you struggling to pay your mortgage? Afraid of foreclosure and the financial mess it can cause? Time is not on your side. Call Alan Stalter, the short sale specialist. For years, Alan has been helping distressed homeowners navigate through the short sale process. His experience will get you out of your home without the credit score damage that follows foreclosure. If you want a fresh start, you need to call Alan Stalter, the short sale specialist, 248-854-3829, or MetroDetroitShortSale.com.
If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Thav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
Going from hourly to salary seemed like a good career move, but now you're working 60 hours a week instead of 40, and you aren't getting paid any of that extra time. You're stuck, right? Wrong. You can be on salary and still be entitled to overtime. If you've been wrongly denied such pay, you may be entitled to that and more. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke. and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Fav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Welcome back. We've got Ryan Fishman in the studio with us. He's running for state senate in the 13th district, and when we came up to the break, we started talking about Detroit and the grand bargain, and what I said is your Republican counterparts kind of went on record saying, well, they wouldn't have supported it as it was, and I suppose you can say that about every piece of legislation, that if you were the legislator and you could craft your own piece, you would write it differently than what ultimately gets passed, because it's always a compromise. But Detroit, I feel some enthusiasm in the community for Detroit emerging out of bankruptcy. There's still a couple big obstacles to get over beyond the vote. I know that there was just a recent ruling that out of the Sixth Circuit that gave I think Syncora, the bond company, some greater latitude that they're going to have to address the issues going forward. But I see positiveness coming out of the city, and I think it's important. And going back to what you're saying, Ryan, as a young adult in the community coming back to Detroit, to Michigan and the Detroit area to make something happen, I think that's a positive sign. I think it's a good thing, and I'm seeing more of it. Like you said, my daughter happens to live in Israel, but she moved to Miami. Then, and if she had a chance, she would come back and a lot of her friends have gone to Chicago, New York, and have migrated back to the city because there's a strong kids still like to be around their parents, which is a nice thing.
Brian, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Usually, from my knowledge in the political world, it's so difficult to get your message out to the voters, to the constituents.
Yeah.
Now we've got the technology with the Twitter and Facebook and all that other stuff. How do you find today as an effective method to get your message out, and what have you been doing over the last 6 months?
Surprisingly for most folks, the most effective way to communicate your message to voters is still on their door. People want to see retail politics going on because it's a sign that you're working. So this Clawson Independence Day parade that I was at yesterday, the chance to, you're not going to talk to every one of them, but 15,000 people who live in the area and seeing somebody who actually wants to stop them in the street and say, what do you care about? What issues are important to you? I still think that's the single most effective way to convince somebody to vote for you. And particularly for somebody like me, I'm running in a Republican seat by a couple of points. But it's an area where being a Republican isn't a real apt description of the kind of voter you are. We did some very significant polling. 62% of folks in this district are pro-choice in all or most circumstances. 88% of folks support civil unions as LGBT rights as a minimum. 85% of folks voted for the DIA millage that would have supported moving the city forward and funding that package. So I don't know that this necessary breakdown between Republican and Democrat does voters in this district justice.
What percent in the district actually vote in the primary, and what percent actually vote in the general election?
So there's about 268,000 people that live in the 13th district, about 110,000 vote in the general election. In the primary, it's maybe closer to 40, 50, 60,000.
Those are high numbers. Those are real high numbers.
How do you go out and get the youthful market to vote, though, these days? I mean, I remember in college there was always a movement to, join up and vote and sign up and get out the vote. And then you hit your 20s and
free beer.
Apathy became the norm. Oh, I don't need to vote. It doesn't matter. I can't accomplish anything. My vote doesn't mean anything. And I think that there's a prevalent belief of that these days. And how do you go about changing that? How do you get the young urban voter, suburban voter, to come out and vote for you? I mean, you're young. That's great.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it doesn't do much for me.
Well, and I think that's part of where social media starts to come into play, because you can better educate young people on what it is that's going on and how it impacts them. But the polling of millennials was sort of fascinating. And if you looked at why they voted for President Obama, the overwhelming majority said We are, if you look at our gateway issues, why do we vote for one person over the other? We are pro-choice. We support LGBT rights, whether that's marriage equality or an expansion of protections in the workplace. They want to see marijuana legalized. They want to see immigration reform happen. But they're more fiscally conservative than the old school left. They're sort of called this next generation left. And so most of them said, I support the president on social issues. I voted for him on social issues, but I disagree with how he's handling the economy, and I think he's hemorrhaging our future. And I think young people today are active in a way that most are surprised. Actually, the new Democratic Party chair for the state of Michigan, Lon Johnson, has been doing a lot of work across the state looking at 2010 and saying 1 million Democrats sat at home in 2010, didn't vote.
That's the biggest problem. Is
Right.
I think we could all agree that if everybody got off their behinds and voted, there'd be a lot more Democrats in office.
Well, this is a blue state. I mean, by no doubt there are more Democrats than Republicans, but the folks who sat home more in that demographic of 1 million in 2010 was not actually young people. It was older folks. Young people went out and voted in 2010 in a way that we really hadn't seen before, and they voted in 08 and they voted in 12. So,
what do you think 2014 is going to be like?
In my district, I hope that we can tap into,
assuming decent weather.
Right. Well, that decent weather, of course, but that's more of an urban district issue, and I think in our district, it's going to go a lot to how do we network interact with young voters. It is social media.
Yeah, I see social media as a big factor among to get the youthful vote out. Are you a millennial? What are the age? What are the categories?
I think it's anywhere from, I think if you were born today to maybe about 35 years old, 40 years old. That's the classification of today's millennial.
And in between there is next gen.
Yeah,
and
but the reality is, you talk about the young voters, like Brian mentioned, in social media. But when you deal with the absentee voters and the age at which the absentee ballots, I think, are distributed automatically. Right. In reality, when you look at the number of people that vote, it's that older generation vote that really puts one candidate over the top,
right,
according, at least in my opinion.
If you forget the absentee voters, I think you put yourself in a very precarious position. So, for example, for my campaign, when an absentee ballot goes out, you'll get a postcard in the mail, if not the same day, the next day.
It's all about time.
You'll get a phone call from me. I mean, I sat on the phone for, 4 or 5 hours Thursday before leaving the office on the 3rd of July, calling voters, having conversations. As a matter of fact, there was a woman who I spoke with Thursday afternoon that I met walking in the parade yesterday, and she stopped me and said, do you remember me? I'm Lori. We talked on the phone last night. So, if you can catch folks that way and show them that you care and show them that you're working, I think it has an incredible impact. And I haven't heard the fear, you're too young to run, because so many parents and grandparents say, hey, I want my kids back in Michigan. If it takes showing them they got a seat at the table in Lansing, maybe they'll have a seat at the table for more than just the holidays.
Yeah,
here.
I think it's an attribute. I think it's a refreshing thing from the standpoint that you're kind of, you don't bring to the table the old generation politician, which, I think there's a lot of thought process that are on that the people are just the same people running all the time. We'll be back after the break.
Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Fav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Fav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
You like your job. What you don't like is the way your boss has been treating you. He's making comments about how you look instead of your work, and he's been touching you inappropriately. If you complain, is he allowed to fire you? Absolutely not. Unwelcome sexual comments, advances, and contact are illegal in the workplace. Make him pay. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
Is the debt piling up? Struggling to get by?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Every family has the family meeting, and we all know what that means. Dad's got dementia. What are we going to do? What's the care plan that the family has in place? Usually they don't, or they struggle with a care plan. When you go home tonight and you talk to your tax person and you talk to your financial person, say, what's the plan that you have in place? And as soon as they don't give you an answer, give me a call, because I can do it for you.
Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
All right, welcome back. Let me do announcements, then we're going to come back with Ryan Fishman and talk about what his view is and the key issues in the campaign. Seminars. It focuses on Medicaid and estate planning issues. If you or your parents are looking at the prospect of going into the nursing home problem, there's planning that needs to be done so that you can protect the assets that you've built up to that point so that they don't all go to the nursing home or to Medicaid. We ran this seminar in May, 2 of them. They filled up, so we are redoing it live again. Pat Simasco from Simasco Law and myself will be presenting the material. It's free. It's 6:30 to 8 p.m. at our offices in Bingham Farms. If you want to sign up for that, go to cannotaffordtolose.com, and that's how you sign up for that one. On July 23rd, Your Future Without Debt focuses on how to preserve future income for you and your family. It's not about bankruptcy per se. It's a much more macro view of the world that if you are looking, you got to look long-term, 20, 30 years. You've got to take steps to make sure you're saving money for retirement. Debt minimization or elimination is one of the aspects of accomplishing that. That seminar is from 7 to 8:30 at our offices in our seminar room on July 23rd. You can sign up for that at thavgross.com or at financialcrisistalkcenter.com. I want to thank our sponsors, Gold Star Law, Simasco Law, REO Services, Alan Stalter, Short Sale Specialist, Trips Auto Shop and Collision Center in Jackson and Lansing, and U.S. Staffing in Jackson and Lansing, as well as Cardiology Associates that's coming on board. Law and Reality, our show is shifting to a new format and a new name, Law and Reality, probably first week or second week in August. It's going to be a broader scope of topics. We're still going to cover financial issues, but all legal issues. Just as an example, I think last week we talked about covenants not to compete as a way of introducing legal issues that are important to the community and to people, and hopefully to our listeners and TV viewers that are broader in scope than just financial issues.
With a focus on the legality.
With a focus on reality. If you're facing foreclosure, we have a free report called Reg X, How to Save Your Home with Regulation X, The Hidden Secrets, written by yours truly. It's free. If you want to get a copy of it, go to regxhomesaver.com. If you're watching the TV version, we'll put the website up on the screen. All right, back to Ryan. All right, so one thing that's come up is I know you're only 20. You're 25, right?
26.
26.
Last week.
Okay, so happy birthday. That's right.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday. Saw it on Facebook.
34 years difference here. It's like the
Thanks,
spectrum.
David.
It's like a spectrum
I
here.
need you to remind me how old I am every day. When you turn 50, just look out. It's gonna come at you like a ton of bricks.
I'm looking at
let me
your
tell you.
eyebrows, trying to figure out that color.
Oh, there we go with that.
What?
Oprah.
What?
To quote Oprah.
Yeah.
Oprah said that if 60 is the new 40, it really isn't about your age. It's about your health and how you maintain yourself and your hair color. That's a quote from Oprah Winfrey.
You need a response to that?
No, I identified well with it.
We're running out of time. I want to hear from Ryan.
Back to Ryan. So one thing that came up is one time you were a Republican, now you're a Democrat.
Right.
I mean, to me, I don't know that that's a big issue, but what are your thoughts on that?
Look,
I'm sure the Republicans will make a big deal about it.
Well, yeah, but I would say probably the best barometer for that is Ronald Reagan, who famously in 1962 said, "I didn't leave the Democratic Party left me," at a time when Democratic governors in the South were fighting integration and interracial marriage. I'd say today, I didn't leave the Republican Party left me. Maybe it left me long before I left it, but the reality is this is not your father's Republican Party or your father's Republican Party. It's not dedicated to fiscal conservatism and limited government the way it was maybe 30 years ago. My problem is I probably spent too much time reading in history books about what politicians used to do when people used to be leaders and statesmen, and not enough time looking at, Rocky Raskowski's and Marty Nolenberg's running for office every year and every cycle and trying to find ways to nip it and get in. But, when you have guys like Marty who in a debate when he ran for state representative in 2010 say, I'm running to represent the Republican Party. That's what concerns me, because in a district like this, your job is to represent a very purple mix of folks. And I think most of politics, politicians are on the spectrum. I'm far left, I'm far right, where most voters are somewhere between the 40s, where the best seat would be at a football game.
You got a good point. People aren't interested in what party, they're interested in what the issues are. So what do you see as the big issues for Michigan right now going forward in your election and in this campaign?
I think it's three things. It's job creation and struggling with a new economy that we haven't seen before. It is transparency and accountability in Lansing and making sure that as a fiduciary of taxpayer dollars that we're spending them responsibly. So, for example, when they voted to cut the pension and lifetime health care and benefits for lawmakers, Marty Nolenberg slid in an amendment that said, hey, it's going to stay current through the class of 2014 so I can get mine. For me, day one, the first promise I've made is I would cut the $10,000 expense account that every lawmaker gets. It's about 150 lawmakers. You take that money over 10 years, it'll send 150 kids from K to 12. Is that going to fix our state's economy? No. But it's like eating a whole pie. You kind of have to go piece by piece and find the inefficiencies. And then the other big one is public education. We have got to deal with the public ed crisis in our state. We've become the most competitive for worst in the country. We're in the bottom 5 in public ed. We're in the bottom 5 in special ed. We've seen some of the most dramatic cuts in public education in the state's history made under folks like Chuck Moss as appropriations chair. And if we don't do something today about that funding model, long term we are hemorrhaging our state's future.
You think there's the votes to get that done in the legislature?
I think that a compromise could be struck between Republican Governor Snyder, maybe a Democratic House majority, and a Senate that has a little bit closer to a, maybe 70-30 or 60-40 as opposed to an 80-10 split, which it does right now. There's 38 seats, 12 of them are held by Democrats. So I think there's moderate Republicans, folks like Senator Mike Kowal, that can be worked with that can solve these problems.
We're out of time. When the primary is when?
August 5th.
All right, so if you want to vote for Ryan, show up to the primary in the 13th District. Want to thank you for joining us on the show. We got 10 seconds. Any last words you want to say to the voters?
RyanFishman.com, Facebook.com/Team Fishman. We'd love to hear from them.
Thanks for joining us, Ryan. We'll be back with the next segment of the Financial Crisis Talk Center.